Hello everyone, and welcome to this special edition of MSBA's Capital Watch, a look back at the 2015 regular session of the Missouri General Assembly. And here to discuss that with us is Mike Reed, MSBA's Associate Executive Director for Advocacy and our Chief Lobbyist, and Mike Grote, our Governmental Relations Consultant for MSBA. And gentlemen, thanks a lot for being with us. Mike, first of all, your overall impressions and assessment of the session, especially regarding education.
Well, it was an interesting session, to say the least. Not a lot. A disappointing session. I think we can say that there was a great meltdown at the end. Nothing passed. There were a lot of problems. A lot of things on education were discussed, but not a lot of bills that were passed. Frustrating session, and one that I'm not sure the people were well served.
Mike Grote, let's talk about funding for education, something our members are always interested in. Where did we end up on that?
Sure. So a couple things happened in that last week. Well, one, we passed the budget early, as everyone knows. And during this last week of session, the governor did two things. One, he released some of the funding that was still being withheld from last year, including funding for school board training, which is a positive, as well as he went ahead and signed this year's budget, and that's a $26 billion budget. And the positive thing that for education is there was a $94 million increase, which the design of that is to try to address some of the issues that happened during last session to make sure that both hold harmless districts are properly taken care of, and so that there's more money in the formula so everyone has a little bit of a bump this year. So that's a very positive thing for the budget. So it worked out very well. We had a number of legislators that were working to make sure there was additional funding in the budget for education.
And the governor also, Mike, struck some language in that budget bill. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So towards the end of session, there was a question as to assessments and how those assessments would be done. There still continues to be some concern over Common Core and what exactly Common Core is and smarter balanced assessments. And so there were $7 million which were put into the conference committee report, but along with that it said that those funds cannot be used for smarter balance. It also essentially went forward and said that the state must develop its own assessment test that's a Missouri-based test. What the governor determined is that that language was essentially legislating through the budget, which is not constitutionally allowed. He struck that language. So what we've got is about $7 million in the budget for assessment, but no real direction on how the department has to spend it and how to move forward.
Mike Reed, one of the major bills that did pass this year, the so-called student transfer bill, House Bill 42, but really that bill has morphed into something very different from that, hasn't it?
That really has. When it started out in the House, House Bill 42 was really a pretty good bill. It was designed to work with the students in unaccredited districts and to make sure that unaccredited districts do not become bankrupt. What happened was it got changed along the path. So now that there's an expansion of charter schools in that. Charter schools are expanded into all of St. Louis County as well as Jackson County, except for Center and a couple of other very small school districts. There's an expansion of virtual education. There's a question there's also an expansion in building accreditation in urban districts, which is a defined term, meaning St. Joseph, Columbia, Springfield, Independence, in Kansas City. Those districts' buildings will be accredited. Accreditation will be by buildings and not by districts. So a school building in Springfield may be unaccredited, and if that happens, then the students in that building can go to any other building in the district, and if that's full, then they can go to a district next to the Springfield district, and the district pays for it. So there's a multiplier effect. There's a great question on how does that affect students throughout the state of Missouri. And the bottom line is House Bill 42 does not accomplish what it was intended to do, which was set out to help kids in failing districts. That does not put a cap on tuition charged by receiving districts who receive students from unaccredited districts. There are a lot of problems with it. And the governor is looking at it, and we'll see soon whether or not he vetoes it, but it has not been the panacea that it was sold to people as.
And as you mentioned, Mike, one of our major concerns has to do with the expansion of virtual schools. in Missouri. Why are we so concerned about that?
Well, virtual schools are run by people outside the state of Missouri, and and their accountability is not the same. We already have a virtual program in Missouri, MOVIP. We should be funding MOVIP and not funding someone else. It's also that the cost is more. This is $2,000 more per student than they're paying MOVIP right now. So it could be an appreciable amount of money. Again, we're making sure that something on the outside is not well regulated, and it's a money grab.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike, as we're recording this program, the governor has not acted on the bill, but we are urging him to veto that bill.
That is correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we'll see what happens with that. Mm-hmm. Another bill that passed this year, Mike Reed, had to do with the St. Joseph School Board and some of the election processes there.
Well, there was a problem with the St. Joseph School Board that the auditor discovered, and what happened was the legislature came in and changed the length of terms of St. Joseph School Board members from a 6-year term to a 3-year term. They also changed the number of signatures required to run for the St. Joseph School Board. There were some other provisions that were tried to be passed that did not pass. There was a recall provision of recalling school board members in St. Joseph that did not pass. But once again, this is an example of what happens when school boards let things get out of hand. And this did get out of hand, and the legislature stepped in.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike wrote, besides the bills that did pass, we really had quite a number of bills that did not pass, a lot of issues that we've been following during the session. One of those had to do with additional civics education testing. That did not pass, did it?
So we saw a number of, as session unfolded, there's a previous question motion that was used in the Senate in the final week of session, and that was on right to work. Was an issue that was important to a number of senators, and therefore the minority party, the Democrat Party, said we're not supportive of this procedure being used. It's been a number of years since it was used in the Senate before, and they essentially shut the Senate down for that final week of session. And what that created was both a logjam of legislation coming over from the House, as well as legislation that was sitting on the Senate calendar ready to be taken up for a final vote. And that was essentially the situation with the civics bill. It had been placed in a number of pieces of legislation. It was moving, and it got caught up in that logjam and didn't pass, frequently when things don't pass in the Capitol, it's actually a good thing, especially when there are attacks on education.
Mm-hmm. A couple of other issues that did not pass that we were following, anti-bullying legislation was one of those, and also a bill dealing with special education and due process. So those did not pass, did they? No.
This was a session where we saw more bills filed this year than the history of any other legislative session. We saw fewer pieces of legislation pass than the history of any other legislative session. So percentage-wise, there's a lot of things that fell off the table at the end.
Mm-hmm. And Mike Reed, of course, the session is over now. What do we have to look forward to here during the next few months? And do our members need to continue to be involved in contacting their legislators?
Extremely involved. First of all, we need to discuss House Bill 42 and whether or not it's vetoed. If it is vetoed, then we need to work with the legislature and to make sure that the veto stands. And so then we have to work with that. Also, we need to come up with a plan to make sure that failing schools and failing districts are treated right. So students in failing districts have a proper education, and we don't bankrupt school districts. So we cannot just keep coming back and saying, not my plan, not here, it's not something for me to worry about. While people in the urban districts look at it one way, people in the country still have a responsibility to make sure that these kids get a good, proper education, because it's all of our students. So we have to look at that. We just cannot keep saying somebody else's problem and kicking it down the road. So we're going to have to work on that. It's also extremely important that during the off season, while the legislators are home, that school board members meet with them and discuss problems that are mutual to both the school and to the representative. Let the school board member needs to let the representative know or senator know how the budget affects their district, how cuts affect their district, where does transportation come in. Bring legislators into your school, show them what is going on, show them the good things and show them the things that are problems. And so we can work together instead of trying to work at opposite ends of each other. So we're not trying to fight that we're trying to pull together at the same time.
All right, Mike Reed and Mike Grote, thanks a lot for all your good work during the past legislative session, and thanks a lot for being on our program, giving us a wrap up on that session. We appreciate it very much. And we thank you for joining us for this special edition of MSBA's Capitol Watch.